Empire.
It was ugly, but it was a win. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about some of the officiating issues in the game, especially with that clock stoppage near the end that shouldn't have stopped, but did, and just some of what people had to say about that. But also some other nuggets from the Commanders' 20-19 win over the New Orleans Saints. And we'll get to all that in a minute. And also don't forget on Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern time, I'll be doing a live stream with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. So tune in for that. And also be doing a game review for Tuesday morning, taking a look at some of the key plays, some highlights from the game, etc. But let's get to some of the stuff right away. And first of all, it's an ugly win, and we know it. Everybody knows it. They were fortunate to pull this one out, and it shouldn't have been that close. We all know it. You know it. They know it, period. So we don't even need to say it too much because it's true. Like, that's not a game. They were up 17-0. You're playing teams that a team that is banged up, a team is using two backup quarterbacks, and it shouldn't have been that close. And that's all there's to it. Now, the Commanders had a couple issues of their own to deal with, but by and large, they were in better shape, and they had a 17-0 lead. They dominated the time of the possession, more than 40 minutes holding the ball, and it still came down to a 2-point conversion. So, but let's get into some of the ramifications of this win. Again, it's a win, and they are 9-5, and that's the best record they've had at this point in the season since 1992. So let that soak in, folks. It's the first time they've had a winning season since 2016. So while you can gripe about the ugliness of the win, and that's fine, it certainly beats a loss, and it has put them in position again in a good spot for the playoff push down the stretch. But to finalize that playoff push, you're going to have to play better or finish games better, because for a while they played pretty well. They were doing what they should, right? They were beating a team that was down. It's like the Saints do have some talent on defense. They're more banged up on offense. They do have talent on defense. So they're not bad there, but they were doing what they should. And then it just fell apart, and you've got to finish better if you want to make a playoff, if you want to clinch that playoff spot, because they're 9-5. They are in good shape with the tiebreakers over each team from the Western Conference. So if they tie with any of those teams, they'll get in at whether it's 10-7, 11-6. And then, but the one team to watch would be Atlanta, because Atlanta plays here. Now I'm recording this I wasn't going to say I'm recording this without knowing what Atlanta did today, except that they play on Monday. So that's a big game. So if Atlanta loses another game, that puts them in a bad spot. But they can still, if they, that game at Northwest Stadium will be very big in 2 weeks, because if Washington wins, great shape. And if Atlanta runs the table, they have a couple easy games, plus the game at Washington. So that would give them a major tie-breaking edge. I don't think they're good enough to run the table, but you don't want to, this team still needs to win that game, because you can't go 9-8 and make this thing. I just don't see it. And again, you've got to play better. And the question is, will they and can they? Can they? Yes, I think they can. Will they? We'll have to wait and see. I will say this: it was a subdued locker room after the game. I think for the exact reasons we all know, like, it should not have come down to that. There was some laughter in the locker room. There wasn't a lot of music. There was some music playing, but it wasn't as boisterous as maybe after a win. If they had gone out there and if they had put them away 20-7 or whatever it is, 27-10, which is what it could have been with a couple missed chances there, I think you would have had a different sense in the locker room. I think players were more relieved. And in fact, like when you talk to guys, sometimes just based on the looks on their faces, you really couldn't tell if it was a win or a loss. I think it was more relief than anything. And one reporter even asked Bobby Wagner, like, you just don't seem too excited. He's like, and even he said, it's a win, but they know they have things they have to get better at, and they know they have to finish better for sure. So that was the mood in the locker room. I think it probably matched a lot of yours. Grateful for the win. What does it mean? I mean, they've won 9 games. We haven't seen this in a long time here, folks. And, certainly, again, no winning record since 2016. and a possible double-digit win season for the first time since 2012. So that's where they're at. And I know, you want to see them play better. You want to see them beat a good team. But you can only, they've done a good job all year of putting themselves in the spot and making plays when they need to, like on the 2-point conversion. So first of all, let's get to the play before the 2-point conversion, because should not have been in that situation. It was a horrendous job by the officiating crew to put to with what happened. So Foster Moreau gets tackled the 1-yard line. The side judge, Jim Quirk, comes running in and signals to stop the clock. That clock, now, by my estimation, it was at least 4 seconds, and you could probably say maybe 5, a little bit more than 5. And that's all it took. For whatever reason, he stopped it. Should not have been stopped. Sean Hockley, the referee, said after the game, told a pool reporter, should not have been stopped. It was inadvertent and it was a mistake. But it's not reviewable. So why it's not reviewable? It's hard to say. I mean, I guess you'd have to sit there and count down how long it was out and et cetera. Bottom line is they messed up. I have no clue why it was calling for the clock to be stopped. The Saints didn't have a timeout. You don't stop the play in that situation. It made no sense to me why they did that. I think fortunately for Washington, they got the win, because otherwise that play would have been a massive, massive issue. As it is, it was still something that was discussed in the locker room. I will say most of the players in the field did not know that the clock had stopped. Their job, Noah Igbenogany told me, he said, he just looked up the clock, saw 9 seconds, and just ran to get in the huddle because you got another play coming. They're going to be able to spike the ball. They spiked the ball at 3 seconds. So if the clock had been stopped, I don't think they end up spiking the ball. Maybe they snap it for one more play, but you're not going to spike it because clock would have run out. And I don't know that they would have gotten the play off had they, even if it wasn't a spike, even if it was running the final play, when they got tackled at the 1, I thought, oh, game's over. And apparently it wasn't. So, but you could see players on the sidelines, some of the guys on the sidelines, the coaches knew. I saw Cliff Kingsbury pointing up at the clock because he knew. Dan Quinn knew, and he even said afterwards he's going to take the high road on this one. I think, again, if they had lost, I think there would have been a far bigger issue. But the Commanders bailed them out on the 2-point conversion. So on that play, one of the things you do in that situation, like, they know it's a condensed situation down there. So that there's only so many passes you can run. And they had just run that little out to the flat with the tight end. But when they put the tight end in motion, that signaled to all the players out there that they were going to run that route to the flat again. And what it did too is it changed the call from zone coverage to man coverage. So Igbenogany was in zone coverage initially, and then based on the change, the tight end went in motion to the right side. That changes the call from zone to man. He gets put in position to cover a man-to-man, and he deflects the pass, and the Commanders win the game. So that's how close it was. But that play kind of bails out the official for botching that clock down at the end there. So again, you can feel good because it's a win, and they still are the 7th seed. Is this a team that's going to win the Super Bowl this year? Well, I think you can look around the NFL or NFC and say, well, there are a few teams that are better, including the team they play next week, Philadelphia. And then the question for Washington is, how healthy are they? Because Zach Ertz left the game with a concussion. Did not see him after the game. Saw Jeremy Chin after the game. He also left and the game, but he said he told one of the coaches he was okay. He seemed to be in an upbeat mood. Don't know what that means for him going forward, and I don't know what it means for Ertz going forward either. Just know we didn't see him. Had the concussion. He did not look great walking off, and he was ruled out pretty quick. So that would be a big loss if he doesn't play next week, because you're already down Noah Brown and Austin Eckler. So you're losing. You would be down 3 key players in that pass game for Washington. So that's what we know on the health. And obviously, that Tyler Biadasz did not play today because of an illness. He clearly would be back next week. And so that's what we know right now. But that's a big game because, listen, it's the last really good team you're going to play before the playoffs. It'd be good for this team to have a very strong showing and a win, to be honest, just to show, hey, you're capable of doing a little bit more than what you've been showing, and you can go out there and beat a really good team. Now, the Eagles are playing well. Now, they almost lost to Carolina last week, so we'll see. And I think there's some things that Washington can hurt them with, but you got to go do it. And I think losing some of these guys, they don't have a big margin for error. What concerns me is they've been committing too many penalties the last couple of games. It was 10 against Dallas, 9 against Tennessee, and 9 again today. That's way too many. They're just for this team to beat a good team, you cannot play that way. And so I think that's going, if they continue that trend, it's going to hurt them. And it certainly hurt them today. One thing Sam Cosmi told us afterwards, that they knew this crew liked to call a lot of ticky-tack stuff, and whether they were or not, like they knew that was the reputation. So the result is 9 penalties, some of them very key. The holding on Nick Allegretti wipes out a really nice play by De'Ami Brown to get inside the 10. That set up a missed field goal attempt eventually. So like that was a huge play in the game for Washington. But anyway, so you're going to have to play a lot better than that to finish better. So, but again, they did finish, they did get the win. So feel good that they're 9-5. And if nothing else, what you know is you've got your quarterback and you got a team that knows how to win certain games. You want to see it better, I get it. But then, like I said, the finishing stuff, the Saints, they have Spencer Rattler, and he's their third quarterback, and they take over on their own 8-yard line, and they drive to the Washington 33. You have just certain mistakes, like the roughing penalties. Some of those I still don't understand, but they're calling them, and they were there, and so, but it adds to the drive. And so they were able to go down and get a field goal, get back in it. You have Benjamin St-Juste, who was not a factor in this game at all, except for one play. He only played, I want to say he only played 3 snaps, but it was only in the first half, it was only 2 snaps. And then he gets in there in the 4th down, gets in a 3rd and 10, playing some press coverage. Well, he gets called for a hands to the face on a play where they would have stopped them and forced a punt. Instead, they keep going, and they end up getting points on that drive as well. So, that's, and I don't think St-Juste went back in. And I think what we saw today is how they're going to rotate with Marshawn Lattimore in there. First of all, Lattimore was really good. The Saints did with, I don't know, maybe the Saints never targeted him. They barely looked at him. So they weren't going to they were barely going to his side at all. So good addition. And then it was Mike Sainristil, who had an interception earlier in the game, and then Noah Igbinoghene also playing when they do the 3 corner sets. They did a lot of 3 safety sets, and that, that may have contributed to St-Juste, but I also think it's indicative of what they want to do. And so, I think the problem with St-Juste, commits way too many penalties, and that was another one. So, and his hands are always up high, whether it's getting pulled, pulling around the upper shoulder pads, getting the hands to the face. You just can't do that, man. That was a rough one. So, but he wasn't just him like that, but that was a play in the game where you stopped him and you're forcing a punt, and then you give him new life, and then you get a roughing penalty on another one on Fowler. So, just way too many bad stuff. 8 sacks allowed. Like there's a season high. This was reminiscent of last year where I felt like Jayden Daniels at times was holding the ball too long. Dan Quinn said that. Jayden Daniels put some of the blame on himself for sure. He's like, you cannot blame all the O-line on that. Like, he's got to be better in those situations, which I agree. I haven't broken down all those sacks, but I do know there are a couple times where it's like you just held the ball too long. Other times, some of those sacks were running out of the pocket and getting stopped for no gain. So not prohibitive plays, save negative plays, but are still considered a sack nonetheless. And I thought the Saints did a good job early in the game of preventing him from being able to run. Now, I told you a couple times throughout the week, I thought that was going to be a big thing for him this week, and eventually it was. Like, he did make some plays off that, and he made some plays with his eyes off that I thought would be, and I told you there'd be a big play off that with some scrambles or the extending plays that if you keep your eyes upfield, and he did that, and we'll get to that in a minute. But anyways, 8 sacks is way too many, and you got to be. Now, I will say, if this were early in the year with Daniels, I'd be worried. He hasn't shown, that's not what he's shown. Like, and it wasn't just on him either, because Coleman got beat a few times, Wiley got beat a few times, so, or at least once, So, like, there was obviously some on the O-line, and Daniels has been really good all year at avoiding those situations. I do think in some cases that he was looking to run, and it was just the difference of a yard, whether it's a sack or a 2-yard gain or 3-yard gain, whatever. Because on film, what the Saints have shown, they do a poor job with their rush discipline at times of leaving the gaps and allowing a quarterback like Daniels to get through. And again, there were times where they felt like they closed the gaps pretty quick, with some linebacker help, and just strung out the plays, whatever. So just, again, way too much to be sure. So, then, but again, like, there were a couple plays in this game where if you make this play, this game it's not a blowout because the way the Saints came back, because they just gave up plays, but there were a couple plays with Jayden and then Terry McLaurin. It's like you're just inches off, and there was a deep one down the middle, like you just too far. You get it, it's maybe a yard too far. not even a yard too far. You complete it, it's a touchdown. You had another one down the right side where it just, right, was a little bit long. Sure. Could Terry McLaurin have caught it? Yes. So but it was a missed opportunity. Regardless, I don't care who's at fault. It was a missed opportunity because he's going down the right sideline, busted coverage. It looks like corner doesn't sink more. And there's no safety over there. So I'm not sure what happened with the Saints, but it was wide open. It was a missed opportunity. And then you had another, it was off his hands. He bobbled it a little bit, so just a missed chance. And you can't it's hard to miss those. But like the good thing for them is that those plays are there. And I thought they'd get some of those plays this week. Then you had another one where it's like just a slightly underthrown ball. And McLaurin was unable to make a contested catch. The defensive back, I will say, played it well. And just broke it up. So, but those are three chances. And like I said, I don't care who's at fault. It was just three missed opportunities for Washington to get points. And each one of those would have put a lot of distance in this game. For sure. And then again, you have a penalty that wiped out the pass to Dyami Brown. And that didn't help. And, the one thing too, and I want to look into this too, just a little the diversion here with McLaurin, but it looked like he was going more in motion than he had in the past. And he was certainly lining up on the right side more than he has in the past. So they were doing a good job of making sure he was in motion a lot and movement a lot. And I think that has to continue. I think that especially this week against the Eagles, you absolutely have to continue that for sure. So I felt like they would run the ball better. Brian Robb, the running backs did not have they ran for 137 yards, I think it was, but that was all because of that was mostly because of Jayden Daniels. Like Robinson was 21 for 65, I think it was. That's not what I thought they would do. I thought they'd run the ball better. Now, maybe Biadasz is part of that. Losing Biadasz was a big key. If you listen to my 5 things I think on Saturday, you understand what they think of him and how important he is to the middle and how crucial his signing was. But Michael Dieter has experience. And, so it's not like he can't play. And I don't feel like there were a couple issues up front. Sometimes the issues were him. Sometimes it was Sam Cosmi in cover, in pass pro, whatever. So and the point is, or on a draw, right? It wasn't always just one guy, but I felt like the run game would be better for sure with Robinson healthy and looking to like they're getting going. And McNichols and Rodriguez weren't really big factors in that. The pass game is really what was powering them. And there were a lot, he had a lot of completions to a lot of receivers. And you kind of have to. You got Crowder involved, you got Zacchaeus involved. Dyami Brown had 3 catches. So, Sinnott had a catch. Bates had a catch. So that's what they're going to have to do. And they're going to need to get contributions more from Ben Sinnott, guys like that, because Zach Ertz was a crucial part. Like whatever you think, the guy's he has 54 catches this year, including the one-handed grab that he got hurt on where his head got slammed to the turf afterwards, but it's a tremendous catch and it sets up a score. So, that could be a key loss for them because of how much Daniels trusts Ertz, especially in the middle area, and how there really isn't a lot of that with Sinnott or Bates. I mean, they've only combined for at one point today, I think it was like 10 catches for the year or something, not a lot. So that's something to watch. They do have Colson Yankoff on, who's also around, so they can have him play next week if Ertz can't go. But that you're losing a reliable target when you're already down a couple good targets as well. So not ideal going into that game next week. But I think it was good to see how Daniels, felt like he had a pretty good game. I think very good game, and just very close to having a tremendous game. Outside of, like I said, some of the sacks are on him, a couple missed connections, but overall really, really good. And he came through in some key moments. A 3rd and 14, he scrambles for, 20 some yards and gets points on that one. You have a 4th down and 1 where you're able to, where it looks like he's trapped and is going to get stopped and give the Saints the ball back around midfield with more than 4 minutes left in the game. And then he jumps over the line and gets that 1st down barely. Then you have the play to Terry McLaurin on the first series where they got new life because the Saints were called for a penalty on a made field goal. And so Washington gets the ball, and then now you have, but they're in 2nd and goal from the 16 because of a couple, a fumble by Daniels at the 2, and then a holding penalty pushes it back. So again, penalties, mistakes, killing them today, hurt them today. But fortunately for them, they recover the fumble, and then on the 2nd down, you have you have Daniels extending the play for 8 seconds. And this is what I was talking about against the Saints. I felt like there'd be opportunities to get plays. Now, did not go how I thought it would. So I thought there'd be, you're 25, whatever. You see a guy downfield, you get a boom, big play. This was just a tremendous job by Daniel. So, he has pressure coming from the right. He moves over to his left, turns, comes back, bounces the ball on the ground, looks up, keeps his eyes upfield, and sees Terry McLaurin barely open coming across side and just connects with him. Just the according to Next Gen Stats, McLaurin had 0.7 yards of separation. That's how tight it was. Then you have Brian Robinson coming from the outside, just a extremely tight window throw, but he made it, and it was a really good throw and a really good catch. So, that was a great job by Daniels, and his numbers overall were good, 226 yards. I think it was like 66 yards rushing, a very, very effective game, but just so close to having a tremendous game. But, they won. So, then you have but again, little mistakes. So you go down to, they have it third down and 1 inside the 2. So you could run Brian Robinson there, you do whatever. They opted for a play action and then a rollout to the right, giving Daniels the option to run or throw. But on the play, you have Cam Jordan basically gets in there almost unblocked because Luke McCaffrey was supposed to chip him. The chip wasn't great, and he barely moved him. Then he releases into the end zone, but 2 defenders are right there and basically bottle him up. But because he's not able to chip Jordan, you've got to get him inside. Now he's a big dude, but this is the job on the play, and you got to get him inside, and then it allows Daniels to get the edge. He could not get the edge with Jordan there. It has to take a sack, and they end up kicking a field goal. So, but to me, that was, again, details. And McCaffrey's been pretty good in the chip game this year. I almost think he just rushed it a little bit. You've got to get more of him to move him inside, which is hard, but that's what they needed him to do on the play, because he didn't. Daniels couldn't get outside. If he gets outside, you got 2 defenders on McCaffrey. I don't know that he scores. I think he does because it's Jayden Daniels. He's fast and he's athletic. So, but he would have been a good shot, but he had no shot when you can't move Cam Jordan like that. And so just another play where it's like you need to be better, and young guys learn from that stuff. So, but again, 20-19, they got the W. They're 9-5. I think one of the other things that showed up today too is I think sometimes the linebackers in coverage, it's not as effective as I think as it could be. Really like Frankie Louvu, man. He gives a lot of energy, but he's a guy that does great moving forward. And so in coverage, I think he's really aggressive coming up sometimes. I think that leads to sometimes an issue in the drop or whatever, in drops. And that, he give the Saints credit for the touchdown to Kamara, because that was a really good design trick play thrown back with Cedric Walker. But on the play, then you have Lou who's got to cover Kamara, but that was a tough one, but and then you had Kamara earlier in the game where he's able to split his zone coverage between Louvu and Bobby Wagner and get through there. So I think that's something that you wonder a little bit about there. Like, can you improve in that area? Or do you just say with a guy like Louvu, like, hey, the dude is great going forward. He's going to make some plays for you. He's going to get blitzes. He's going to do this. And, you're going to give up 1 or 2 things in the pass game off of that, but you live with that because he makes he makes a ton of plays. The guy could be going to the Pro Bowl. So it's not a complaint. It's just that was another area that you say, like, is that something to watch over the next few weeks as we get, you're going to see you get better offense again, but with the Eagles, better offense with the Falcons. And listen, man, the Cowboys are playing well. They had a good game today against the Panthers. So I think that's something just to watch down the stretch as well. Derek Force played today. Good to see him back out there. They played a lot of 3 safety sets. That's why he was in there alongside Quan Martin and then Jeremy Chin. There were times that Chin and Quan would be up in the line. And so just gave him some versatility there. That's it, folks. I think the kicking thing is going to be something to watch, because it's just, I can't believe the bad luck they've had with kickers from the time from February on, right? From from all their signings. And then, now having another guy who couldn't kick in a game because he was hurt, and Seibert, can't do it right now either. So it's just really bizarre how much these guys keep getting hurt, and how it can impact the game. So not ideal, man. This is a team, listen, I will say this too. December football, January football, you always hear coach talk about it. They talk about it today. Like, it gets tougher now. And I think one thing that they appreciate is that, yes, while it was an ugly win, they all know that it's still hard to win in this league, no matter what, and you're on the road. And so I think you have to appreciate those W's when you get them, and you can't overreact like, okay, yeah, it's, like I said, it's better than an ugly loss for sure. And that would have been an ugly loss. That 2-point conversion was the difference between an ugly win and ugly loss. And ugly loss means they would have been 8-6 and, 8-6 and not, and losing their edge in the wild card race. So like, that would have been a real tough one to take for them for sure. So this beats that, and they're still in position to do what they need to do to get in. To me, you got to win one of these last three. So just, again, you have the tiebreakers over the Western teams. 11 would be ideal, because I think that more than that for sure clinches it. But 10, it would be, I think, will be the magic number to get in. But can you get that one last one? Because again, you got tough Philly team, Atlanta coming in, which is going to be like a playoff game, and then Dallas on the road. So, and if Dallas is playing better, and who knows, is that for McCarthy's job? You never know. So anyway, a lot of things to consider, but they did get the win. Feel good about that. And you can hey, listen, I'll tell you what, folks, it's got to feel much better for you that you can complain after a win than complaining about another loss. So keep it in perspective. And there's a long way to go in this program to get where they really need to go, where these kind of wins are a lot, are few and far between. And the expectations become a lot higher. So that's probably still a year away from that. So enjoy what this is, which is a 9-5 team. So anyway, folks, that's it from New Orleans. Appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back on Tuesday morning with another episode, and then Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern time, with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. So I'll talk to you next time.